evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, August 27th at 6:07, and this is the regular monthly meeting of the Michigan City Plan Commission. Mr. York, could we have the roll call, please?
Ms. Carnes.
Present.
Mr. Gallus.
Here.
Mr. Granquist.
Present.
Mr. Lashford.
Here.
Mr. Klender.
Here.
Ms. Moore.
Present.
Mr. Peller.
Here.
Mr. Sperling.
Here.
Mr. Zimmer.
Here.
And Mr. Hill. We have a quorum.
Next item is approval of the minutes from July 23rd meeting. I've been informed that we have one additional item that needs to be attached. Otherwise, I would be looking for an approval to, and a motion to approve.
Mr. Zimmer.
Yes, sir.
Yes, in reviewing these, I noticed that the list of attachments does not have a reference to the findings for petition 901-19, which we made at that meeting, and we signed a copy of a physical document. So I would ask that the minutes be amended to provide under the category attachments, item 6, findings for petition 901-19.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we just get the roll call on that?
I assume that the motion is to approve the minutes as amended.
Ms. Carnes.
Yes.
Mr. Gallus.
Yes.
Mr. Granquist.
Yes.
Mr. Lashford.
Yes.
Mr. Klender.
Yes.
Ms. Moore.
I was absent.
Okay. Mr. Peller.
Yes.
Mr. Sperling.
Yes.
And Mr. Zimmer.
Yes.
Motion approved.
We will waive the reading of policy of conduct and procedures, but have them inserted into the minutes, please. Our first petition this evening is petition 901-19.
904-19.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
904-19. Is there somebody here to present the petition?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Commission. I am Christopher Willoughby of Brady, Nelson & Janes here on behalf of Lakeshore Hilltop LLC. Tonight with me I have Bruce Woodruff, who is a principal in that LLC, as well as Hashem Khalil of Global Engineering. And collectively we have submitted, and you have before you for consideration, a development plan, all of as part of our application for a major subdivision. The property is proposing, and you have the detailed plans before you. In the interest of trying to be forward-thinking and not killing trees, and all of the process that has recently been approved to preserve what's there. You have paper galore before you, which is part of the process here. I want to head off because we certainly know there's a lot of concerns and there's a lot of interest, as there should be. This is a great piece of property and one of the last best piece of property in that area to do what client proposes to do, and it's been a long haul from what you were involved with before in terms of creating the process that we're now. I'd be less than genuine if I told you I was excited to be the first step in that new process, but we're grateful for the opportunity because our client's excited to move forward. The intention is to be a good neighbor and to take into account the surroundings. And again, as you can see by the interest in the audience tonight, we're well aware of the concerns. But I want to remind you, to the extent Mr. Hale hasn't or won't, and I'm certain that he has and will, remind you that there's a lot of process here. This is really the beginning. It's for you to consider our development plan, but by no means are there a lot of questions that might be answered tonight. And so for us to try to head off concerns about traffic studies or drainage or those things, tonight's not the night for that. And so we're not dodging, we're not hiding anything. Those things, it's just not part of the process other than complying with the requirements the city is going to have us do. So in terms of the engineering, all of those things, there won't be answers to those tonight. And we're not required to. And again, that's not taking the approach of where everything is clandestine and keeping it away. It's not. This is the very beginning of the process here, other than some meetings at nauseum. Craig and Skylar have logged a lot of hours in trying to help us get this off the ground. And so we don't intend to say much other than answer some questions, because this is really more of a checklist. Have we complied with the things that we're required to submit to you to consider our development plan in the infancy stage? Shem is here to answer questions, but again, I think a lot of what we have is very limited at this time, and we feel that we've complied with the requirements to date that would allow you to consider and approve our development plan, which ultimately gets us to the next stage of submitting for our primary plat. Another concern that we are aware of is that there's a sliver of property that's involved in this subdivision or proposed subdivision that involves a piece of property that's also in Beach Walk. Again, we feel tonight's not the night to have that discussion. I don't know that at any point that discussion is in the purview of the commission. However, I want to communicate that we're mindful of that. And again, we welcome anybody, neighbors, interested parties that want to approach and discuss our plans. I don't think tonight is a concession night. It's not any of those other than putting before you our development plan, answering the questions that we can answer, and respectfully asking you to approve us so that we can go on to the next stage. And again, I would remind everybody, and we don't take lightly, that beach is a protected area, and Sheridan Beach and the properties surrounding that are an important part of this city. So we recognize that it's important to everybody. So while we intend to listen, there may be less answers than people would like tonight, but I just want to remind everybody that there's a lot more to the process, and this new process is just that. As far as I know, this is the first project following this process. And so with that, we will yield the floor unless there's questions that you have of us before you entertain questions from the public.
Do any of the Plan Commission members have any questions for Mr. Willoughby or the developer or the engineer?
Mr. Willoughby, you've expressed a lot of information of what our responsibility here tonight is not. For your sake and for the general information's sake, can you summarize what you're looking for tonight?
Tonight we are, as I said at the outset, but then followed up by a lot of other things, as you've said. We're looking simply for an approval of our development plan as submitted, and recognizing that that's a work in progress, but that is really all that can and will happen tonight. There is more process, but we are ultimately seeking your approval of our development plan as submitted.
Does the plan department have any comments? Staff report?
So first reports are going to come from petitioner recommendation to the Planning Department, petition number 904-19, Lakeshore Hilltop LLC, requests a major subdivision. This is from the Sanitary Department. The Michigan City Sanitary Department District has preliminarily reviewed and reviewed the proposed primary plat with regard to the utility plan. The condition of the proposed receiving sanitary sewer and the downstream capacity of the district's existing sanitary sewer infrastructure. The district cannot at this time demonstrate that enough downstream capacity is available to serve 20 new homes characterized by high summer occupancies. Additionally, the district has some concerns with the proposed stormwater drainage systems. The district anticipates needing at least 45 days to further evaluate the condition of the proposed receiving sanitary sewer system, the existing sanitary sewer infrastructure further downstream, and the downstream capacity of the sanitary sewer system to the wastewater treatment plant before providing specific findings and potential requirements regarding the subdivision. The refuse department takes no exception at this time to the proposed subdivision. Okay. This is from the water department. The Department of Waterworks has no objections to the proposed subdivision. Water is available. Developer will need to contact the water department or contact the Department of Waterworks to discuss water service needs and requirements. All right. Michigan City Planning Commission, August 27, 2019, case number 904-19, Hilltop Major Subdivision, development plan approval request. Approval of a development plan for a 20-lot major subdivision of 7.78 acres, zoned R1E Waterfront Residence District. Staff analysis. The property in question is currently vacant and unsubdivided. The surrounding uses are single-family, residential, and are zoned R1E to the north, south, west, and PUD to the east of the site. Subsection 4.04.04 subsection L, standards applicable to the R1E district. Subsection B, development plan. The information required to be submitted includes 1. A map detailing the proposed vehicle and pedestrian system, including A. Street layout and cross section, which is provided. B. Points of ingress and egress and traffic control devices provided. C. Sidewalk and crosswalk improvements provided. D. Common parking areas as applicable, not applicable. E. Location arrangement and number of lots, which is provided. F. Minimum area, width, and depth of lots provided. G. Areas of common open space or recreation within the proposed development, and that's provided. H. Topography with 1 foot contours indicated in areas where slopes of 12% are clearly delineated. That's been provided. I. All protected trees as set out in 17.02 landscape requirements, including Latin names, genus, and species. They did a tree survey, which is provided. The submitted development plan includes all of the above items. 2. An indication of each proposed phase within the development and land to remain undeveloped. No phasing is being proposed at this time for this specific subdivision. Number 3, proposed building architecture, bulk, scale, and form, and materials for all applicable uses, including at least 2 building elevations, roof plan indicating orientation of roof pitches and direction of gables, and site design standards. A letter has been provided indicating that the architecture is proposed to follow the allowable dimensional and building standards and minimum square footages provided by the underlying zoning code. Number 4, proposed drainage plan including the location and capacity of proposed stormwater and other storm sewer management facilities and proposed alternative methods for handling stormwater, example structural and non-structural best management practices, BMPs, in compliance with performance standards outlined in section 22-744, requirements for stormwater management plan approval. And drainage structures are shown on the development plan, but full drainage drawings and calculations have not been reviewed or approved. These should be submitted along with the application for primary plat and be shown on the primary plat along with any required easements associated with the drainage system. Number 5, dune protection plan to protect both foredunes and back dunes from breach, blowout, and general erosion due to development. Significant portions of the largest wooded dune on the property are proposed to be preserved, as shown on the development plan. The tallest wooded dune is being set aside and preserved, and will not have building lots located on the dune. Let's see here. Other consideration. Staff recommendation. Staff has reviewed the proposed development plan and offers the following. Number one, at the time of application for primary plat, subdivider will need to address the following. There will need to be granted an easement along the remainder of the frontage to further restrict any other lots 1 through 6 fronting Lakeshore Drive from applying for future curb cut permits. Number two, the retaining walls should be covered by a larger surety if they are to be included in the right of way. The walls are potentially liable for the public to take over, and because the retaining walls may fail or need to be repaired. Next, extra surety may be required for the permeable pavers and continued maintenance of the on-site filtration system within the right-of-way. And finally, staff has determined that the proposed development plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which calls for the property to be developed as suburban general residential, which includes detached residential of 1.8 to 14.0 dwellings per acre. This proposal is at 2.7 dwellings per acre. Staff also finds that the proposed development plan satisfies the development requirements specified in the zoning ordinance under section 1402 and 1403 of the 1400 series of Indiana Code 367-4. Staff finds that the criteria required for submittal and approval of a development plan has been satisfied and recommends approval of development plans subject to the following. Number one, provision of a dune protection plan as required per zoning ordinance 04.04 subsection L, subsection 1, subsection B, 5. As I stated, they have set aside the dune, but they have not provided a required protection plan for how to manage that dune in the future. Okay, what's the capacity? There should be one final condition for approval, and that approval would need to be two. Developer must provide proof of capacity to the sanitary district for the sanitary storm sewer, so that they may do their analysis. And I'm assuming within that 40-day period, 45-day period that you guys have requested. Yes, and proof that capacity exists within this system. Is that correct? Yeah. So let's revise that. The sanitary district must provide proof to the developer that capacity exists within the sanitary and the storm sewer system. Is that correct? Yeah. Basically, the capacity has to exist.
Absolutely, sure.
That's part of our primary.
Should I? Wait. We're going to strike number 2 because that will be provided at time of primary plat. Yeah, strike condition number 2. After staff finds the final, it's basically under provision of a dune protection plan. We added a number 2. We're going to strike that number 2 at this point in time. Yeah.
So I have a question. So what about items 2, 3, and 4 from your list above?
Those are just our observations of.
Okay, but they're not
They're not
conditions?
conditions. They're just
Okay.
Basically just putting the developer notice
that we will be requesting that at primary plat, but it's not a condition of approval for this. Those things have to be worked out later, like
Okay.
easements. They're going to have to basically draft easements for probably sanitary, water. It's just another easement
Okay.
to add, and we talk about construction documents at the time of primary, and that will need to know how to the construction. We'll have the total construction drawings of the walls and things like that, and then we will have to require a surety for the road construction, basically,
Okay.
if it's going to be a public road.
Okay. Thank you. So right now we're just looking at condition number 1 as you wrote it. Okay.
Again, they set aside the dune, and it is very evident they've set it aside. There are no development lots on it, but it's not evident where the plan for the continued maintenance and protection of that is.
Okay.
But to be clear, it's not part of the subdivision. That too.
Yeah, yes, it is.
It's an outlaw.
Yeah, but it's part of the subdivision. Yeah.
Okay, so we've heard the staff report. Are there any other questions from commission members related to any of that?
I do have a question regarding the timing of the traffic study that's required. It's my understanding it's required for a development of 10 or more lots. And at what point, is that primary plat as well?
That's required at the time of application of primary plat.
Okay. Thank you.
There's a lot of information. There's a lot of information that's required at the time of primary plat, and that's one of the things. That's the way that the ordinances were ultimately written. And there's a lot of other detail that's required at the time of primary plat. Basically, this development plan review is the provision of additional information that essentially the Plan Commission approves the concept of the development, and then from there, the official designs capacity, all the review of things like utility capacity, design, access, all that kind of stuff. This is basically essentially a kind of an extra concept plan review stuff.
I have a question regarding the dune. You said it was essentially an outlot. Is the developer going to maintain ownership and control of that, or will that be dedicated to the city, or how will that be treated?
The intent right now, and Mr. Woodruff is here to correct me if I'm wrong, to maintain ownership by the developer.
Was there a report from the fire department, or did I miss that, or do we not need it at this time?
I did not receive a report from the fire department. I would imagine they'll reserve their comments for primary because they will be looking at capacity of fire protection and probably be requiring a certain number of fire hydrants at a certain distance. But they did not provide a official comment on that.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Any other questions from commission members? Skylar, do we want to do public comment now or at the end of the meeting related to this issue? Okay. So at this point, if there are any members of the public that would like to make comments related to this petition, now is your chance. Just step up to the mic, speak clearly, give your name and address.
I'm Harvey Bacorny, 905 Colfax. I live at the bottom of Carolina Avenue. And I'm a professional geologist, state of Indiana. And I just have a couple of comments. Number one, stormwater. There on the plans, there's I believe, permeable paving at the base of the slope of the proposed Carolina Avenue. And I would like to just, for the record, mention that similar streets adjoining that adjoin Lakeshore Drive have a stormwater grate, a large stormwater grate across it. Inasmuch as we get almost annually now 500-year storm ratings, we think that additional grading would be necessary for the kind of slope we're looking at. And the slope presented is about 14% or thereabouts. And I think there's room enough from the top to lower the slope, which would lower the chance of a flash flood coming down the hill. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Kotheimer. I live at, we own the property at 901 Colfax, which is at the bottom of Carolina Avenue as well. Mr. Willoughby repeatedly mentioned tonight that tonight is not the night to review and comment on all the studies and the preliminary work that's been submitted. If tonight's not the night, then I'd ask, when would it be? Seems like there's been a lot of work already been done, and there's been updates to the R1E waterfront plan already that has already been seemingly made in place to facilitate this whole process, which is a little bit concerning to me, seeing as this seems like a predisposed decision here. Sounds like we may be already late for the party. We wanted to move on to the next stage, and it seems like a presumptuous statement, like we're already ready to move on to the next stage. Has this decision been made without consulting everybody?
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay. But there's been, can you comment on the work that's been done prior, the decisions that have been made, changes in plans that have been done prior to this hearing? As it relates to this.
So just so we clear this up before others get up to speak, we're not going to answer questions from the public. This is to receive comments from the public.
Okay, fair
so
enough.
We'll take your comments into consideration as the commission considers the request and moves forward. This is basically to be considered an opportunity for additional public comment. But it's at this point, as I explained, there's a lot more detail that's required for the subdivision ultimately to be approved. But at this stage, there's a specific list of information that needs to be provided by the developer. And essentially, if the developer provides that information, then it's up to the Plan Commission to decide if they've done that adequately, according to that list. And then we take the Plan Commission takes a vote to determine if they are ready to move on to primary plat stage. But we're simply offering the public an opportunity to comment on the proposed development, but we're not going to answer specific questions.
Fair enough. Understood. Mr. York mentioned that the sanitation department was looking into downstream capacity. I can personally let you know that being at the bottom of that the street at Carolina, over the past 2 months we've experienced sanitation issues. The sanitation pipe, we had a plumber down there. Our sewer water was non-functional for a period of at least a week or so. When our plumber was out and the sanitation department was out, the sewer at the bottom of Carolina was more than 75% full, whereas it's supposed to be, from my understanding, it's supposed to be less than a third full at all times just to accommodate that. So it's already overflow. In regards to the trees at the top of Carolina on the north side of Lakeshore Drive, where this proposed street would go through, trees have already been cleared from that area, and I would. Maybe I won't ask a direct question, but I would just pose that were all those trees accounted for, cataloged, and were any of those trees already indigenous species that have already been cut down? And then just my final comment of in Appendix C, this is recently updated in the joint zoning ordinance, Article 4, single-family residence districts, R1E, intent for the waterfront residence district. It quotes, "The R1E district is intended only for the existing historic waterfront neighborhoods and appropriately scaled in infill development. Given the existing built environment and its character, this district is not intended for new, larger scale development." Thank you.
My name's Terry Longo. I'm at 101 Upland, and I've just requested the developer, perhaps on the erosion plan, specifically identify the dunes which are being preserved. It's, for the non-initiated, uninformed. I see a lot of what appears to be a dune, but I don't know which dunes are targeted for a preservation program. So those of us who live on Upland would certainly like that information. Hello, John Wilson at 814 Lakeshore. And I would ask the commission to review the access to this site. It, at least in the plans or that I saw, there's a single access off of Lakeshore Drive. And I was under the impression that any access to Lakeshore in future development would be restricted or minimized. For 20 homes, we'd ask you to look at maybe exit or entry off of Mormon, off the south end of the property. I think Lakeshore is a stressed street already with pedestrian, biking, vehicle traffic. It's a major safety issue.
I'm Howard Mason, 108 Carolina Avenue. We've lived here 35 years, and we have seen a lot of these developments come and go. The last time we heard about this specific development, we were told that there would be no more cuts off of Lakeshore Drive. And now we have this extension of Carolina Avenue. My concerns are safety, water, and traffic. The city is planning on having lanes for bicyclists and walkers to go up and down Lakeshore Drive. With Carolina being extended to the south, this is going to create a very small, narrow bottleneck for all the people that are using Lakeshore Drive. The other thing is that 54% of the acreage that is up in the upland development will be draining north toward Carolina and the immediate area beside it. The road that they are expecting to put in, my question is it going to be able to hold the water or stop the water back? You're talking about a particular type of paver, and with the slope and the amount of water coming down, my question is that it will run right over it and continue right on down Carolina. And if the same thing here will happen that happened with Upland before they put the sewer in, it would run down the street in between the houses and down Carolina. And we would have water 4 and 5 feet wide going down the middle of the street. By the way, even with that great big grate that they put at Upland, there is still water coming down into the neighbors' properties to the north of Lakeshore. The traffic study that they should have done earlier, it appears they're doing it right now, you might as well throw it out because it is such a fictitious study that you're going to get. The study in this Lakeshore area should have been done in July because that's from the middle of June through the middle of August is when all the traffic is. You do it now and there's nobody here. Everybody's gone back. Their children are in school. Their other children are in colleges. It's just one of those things that that's just the way it is right here in Carolina. I am not against the project. I think the project should go, but I believe that they should have another entrance other than Carolina. I think they should consider going in off of Mormon, which is on Washington Boulevard, because I think that they're going to create such a traffic situation there, and my concern is somebody's going to get hurt. The other thing is that it's very interesting that the developer does not want to talk about the things that are concerned with the people that are upstream from them. And you have to remember that when you're dealing with engineers, architects, contractors, they're all salesmen. They're all trying to sell you a product so they can sell a product. So to me, they're saying, believe me, I'll do what you want me to do, but approve me now. And I just don't agree with that. Thank you very much.
Miles Kerrigan. I live at 100 Upland. I agree with everything that's been said so far. And I also agree that the property needs to be developed, not anti-development or anything else. But my property happens to have 7 parcels that back into it. We share the same boundary lines. I think it's too much for one person like myself that owns this property. I feel like I'm collateral damage, so that we can fit 20 parcels into this small area. I think the lots are too small. I've got 5 lots that back into my property that are 50 feet or less. On the sides of my property, there are 2 dunes they propose to build on. Those dunes are steep. And if there's any erosion or if there's any damage done to those dunes, it's going to affect my property. And I thought the 12% slope, that there's no way they could build on that unless they leveled part of that dune and took it out. I'm glad this is just the first meeting we're going to have, because I don't think what's been shown so far is acceptable. I tried to call Mr. Woodruff twice. He doesn't return phone calls. I just wanted to voice my concerns to him personally, but I didn't have the opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Marin. We live at 808 Lakeshore Drive. In addition to the comments that have already been stated this evening, I'd like to also make sure that you do a parking impact there. As we all know, parking in that area of Carolina and over on Nevada, excuse me, is very tight, especially during the summer and fall months. And that with the additional street or Carolina being extended, what impact is it going to have on the parking, and how are we able to address that? Because it's tight now, and we know there's going to be more cars there. How do you plan to handle that? Thank you.
Good evening. Rachel McCormick, 103 Joe Lane in Beachwalk, and I'm also on the Beachwalk Property Owners Association board, so representing them as well. Just a couple of things to point out. Firstly, the traffic study, to go over what the other gentleman said, the traffic study being done at this time of the year. Beachwalk is very, very quiet this week. Between mid-June and mid-August is the busiest time. Everybody here knows it. I'm sure the developer knows it. And why they haven't had a traffic study done before now, I don't know, but it should be done in July sometime so that we can see the people and the cars going up and down Lakeshore Drive. We have a lot of concerns about drainage, erosion, and slope stability. And I think the most important thing that anybody's brought up tonight is this gentleman here asking us, when is the time? The first thing that Mr. Willoughby told us was that tonight is not the time. When is the time? You have a lot of people here that have a lot of concerns and valid concerns. And when will we be allowed to ask these questions and be given the information? Also, Mr. Willoughby noted that a sliver of Beachwalk is in their development. There's actually one full lot, 12B, which is part of this hilltop development. And there's also some question about lots 3C and 4C and 8B and 9B that were replatted in the 2005, but no, the legal description still shows them as part of Beach Walk. So we need some answers on that also. And then according to the International Building Code, which was adopted by Michigan City, a geotechnical investigation by a licensed professional needs to be performed, and that would consider soil types, height of slope, slope gradient, load intensity, and erosion characteristics. Will Michigan City be requiring this study to be, this geotechnical investigation to be done? And when will it be done, and when will we get the results of it? Thank you. I can give you, it's 1808.7.1 of the International Building Code, which was adopted by Michigan City. That's the 2015 International Building Code, 1808.7.1.
Clarify that that's not correct. The City of Michigan City subscribes to the Indiana Building Code, which does not adopt the entire Indiana.
It does adopt this part.
I'm just saying.
I do believe.
I just want to make sure we're referencing the right documents.
Yeah, okay, I can forward you the excerpt.
Hello, I'm Dolores Kodheimer, and I own the house that is at the end of Carolina, along with my son who previously spoke. I think I want to give a more emotional statement here rather than the logical ones that have been going on. What a beautiful, beautiful piece of lakeshore we have here. And I think it needs to be protected. I'm looking at my phone picture of the trees that were cut down opposite of Carolina. I count at least 30 in my little picture here. And I don't see any effort to shore anything up yet. It was like, cut it down, get things ready. And that's one thing that bothered me. What other things bothered me is talking about Beach Walk, that Beach Walk leads into Lakeshore Drive, but from Lakeshore Drive, your only access to the beach is by walking. If you extend Carolina Avenue, now cars can come all the way down our street and then unload or back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. How much you are increasing the traffic on that little space of Carolina by extending it. I think, too, that I want to say that just besides of preserving things, I'm just reminded of all the news that we had recently of Brazil and things burning and nobody seems to care. And I think we have something like this here. Let's put 20 houses in this area, 20 more houses of people coming down to the lake, coming down Carolina Avenue. The traffic, the people, we're not preserving things here. We are making a conglomerate very, very rich. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Michael Kelly from 1029 Lakeshore Drive. And although I share many of the concerns of these other people, I would like just to have two letters that have been sent to the Planning Commission, one from Jeb Mandel, President of the Homeowners Association, the Sheridan Beach Homeowners Association, and one from Sue. Okay, they will be included in the minutes? Thank you. That was my main concern. Thank you.
Hello there. My name's Larry Ryan. I'm at 115 Power Lane, which is Lot 11B. It's a purple house down in Beach Walk. It's adjacent to Lot 12B. I'm not against development. When I bought the house 6 years ago, in fact, I walked up behind my house, saw the land, and pretty much knew that someone would develop it. at some point, and here we are, I get it. What I'm concerned about as I look at the plan is, the cul-de-sac in particular, it's about 6 to 12 inches from my property line. And the cul-de-sac itself seems to be bigger than my entire lot. So that's plenty of asphalt, and the drainage issue that I'm concerned about. Just, it appears they're trying to run the water to lot 12B. Perhaps that's why they wanted to include that, and maybe they're going to work something out. It just seems too big, too much. Develop it, make it smaller, something that isn't going to throw everything off in a lot of different ways. I obviously am mentioning my personal concern. I agree with a lot of the concerns that are here today. I've got more questions, but obviously tonight's not the night for that, but that's all I have right now.
Good evening to all of you and Mr. Zimmer and the Planning Commission. My name is Ed Sawa, and my wife and I reside at 204 Hilltop Avenue. So I do want to thank all of you for giving everybody here the opportunity to speak this evening. I think it's a good step and a good thing to do. If I heard right, you are going to read the letters out loud that you received this evening, right? Okay, good. Because I did write one of those, so I'm glad that you're going to do that. And all I would ask is, and I did say it in the letter, that you as the commission take to heart what is noted in the letters and consider those items in regards to making a decision even to move forward at this point. And thank you, as I said, for the opportunity to talk to you this evening.
My name is Jim Melowitz. My home is at 803 Lakeshore, which is next to what would be Lot 1 of this development. I have two concerns. I share the concerns of all of the people who have spoken before me about the increase in traffic and the detrimental effect that will have upon the homes in the area and the people that use Lakeshore Drive. There's a lot of bikers, walkers, cars, motorcycles, scooters, and every such thing going up and down the Lakeshore Drive during the busy months of the year. This is going to negatively impact that, in my opinion, and I guess I would question why the access is not coming through Mormon Road to the south and instead of Lakeshore Drive, or there isn't an additional access from Mormon Road to alleviate some of the traffic that would be coming on Lakeshore Drive. So I share those concerns. My second concern is more personal, and it has to do with the fact that my home is next to Lot 1, and Lot 2 is about 20 feet higher elevation than my lot. And I guess I wonder what the impact on the dune that is Lot 2 will be from the development of Lot 1. And that is more of a question for the developer, I suppose. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Liz Cunningham. I'm at 107 Power Lane. So our house is at the base of the dune. One of the things that I am looking at as I look at the plat is I see a sliver of land between my house and the house at the top of the dune. And my question is, what can be done with that? Is that part of one of the lots? It looks like it is. And will there be restrictions on what they can do there? Because that is a very, very steep dune. And we have a very, very large retaining wall that's built to protect our house. But if somebody starts doing something to that space right there between our house and the house way at the top of the dune, I'd be very nervous about the stability of the dune and our house. So I guess that's my question. Is there going to be a restriction on what can be done with that sliver of land that'd be part of that lot. But I agree with everyone that's spoken today. Lakeshore Drive is an incredibly busy place in July. And doing a traffic study today, tomorrow, that's not going to be the real impact. The impact is what it's like in July and end of June. So I think it's bad timing. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Hellman. I live at 818 Lakeshore, which is right at the mouth of this new road. Just want to comment on a few things that everybody's pretty much touched on. One, I don't know how many people on the Planning Commission have actually gone down Carolina, but it's not even 2 lanes wide, so that normally in the summer, we'll have a 1-lane access with parking on both sides. Now, if you try to put in stop signs and having, a 4-way stop and having people try to turn onto a road where there's only 1 lane of access, and then 2 people coming down from the road, it's just going to be, a traffic nightmare, and it's going to be a pedestrian and bicyclist, real increased danger. And, I'm here to also agree that really I don't think there's been any consideration to access other than off of Lakeshore, like on Mormon Road. When we were here for Whisper Dunes before, we heard the Planning Commission say that, and I thought I heard you correctly say that there wasn't going to be any more roads granted coming off Lakeshore, so that was a little disappointing. The other thing I just wanted to point out is that the shoreline regulations kind of say that we won't make any developments that are, contrary to the character and, the kind of the beauty of the Sheridan Beach area. And I really think that, you have Beach Walk just, right down the road with their stop sign and, a lot of traffic coming out in the summer. And now you're going to put in this 20-lot development right at, a block down with another. It's just going to be a traffic nightmare. So that's all I want to say.
It doesn't appear there's any more public comment, so I wonder if Mr. Willoughby might. What? Oh, read the letters. Okay.
I want to get these in before we close public comment because they're part of public comment. I received a few letters, so just bear with me. Try not to be too repetitive, but they do need to be read in. This is from Jed and Miranda Mendel, 203 Georgia, Michigan City, Indiana, 46360, August 21st, 2019. Plan Commission, care of Planning Department, 100 East Michigan Boulevard. This is regarding a notice for public hearing on an application for a major subdivision. Dear Plan Commission members, we are writing in response to the request for approval of the proposed major subdivision, the Hilltop Subdivision, engineer project number IN 16054, set for a public hearing before the Plan Commission Tuesday, August 27, 2019. It is imperative that the Plan Commission exercise due caution and a degree of conservatism in reviewing the plans for the Hilltop Subdivision, as it will set an important precedent for the application and interpretation of Michigan City's recently adopted shoreline regulations, which amended Michigan City's zoning ordinance and created special rules applicable to lakeshore development. The shoreline regulations set forth Michigan City's vision for the lakeshore area and adopted rules to assure that that vision is properly implemented. Among other things, the vision includes the expectations of further build-out of the lakeshore area. However, the regulations are intended to assure that any and all such future build-out ensure that land use patterns are compatible with the quality character to add value to the lakeshore area, improve area-wide circulation to manage traffic and provide for bicycles and pedestrian amenities, facilitate sustainable development that preserves open space, and conserves highly sensitive resources, including shoreline as well as the national dunes, wetlands, and their ecologies. Build a workable plan and regulations that reflects the interest of those who hold a stake in the outcomes. In addition, the regulations included many significant and detailed requirements, including, for example, those requiring a traffic study for any development greater than 10 units, the preservation of forest cover, the protection of sensitive environment and ecology of the sand dunes, proper drainage, and the avoidance of erosion. It is clear that developers of Hilltop Subdivision have made efforts to comply with the shoreline regulations, which do apply to the project. However, to date, they have not completed the required traffic study. While not explicit in the regulations, it is consistent with the process of the regulations that the required traffic study be completed before the Plan Commission considers the subdivision approval. Otherwise, the requirement of the traffic study becomes a meaningless check the box requirement. Moreover, it is critical that the traffic study be completed in advance of the hearing and made available to the public so that those potentially impacted by the development and all interested parties have the opportunity to review the traffic study and comment on it prior to the Commission's consideration and possible approval of the new development. It is worth emphasizing that the new Lakeshore zoning ordinance explicitly states that the development plans should reflect the interest of those who hold a stake in the outcomes. Among those with the greatest stake are the people who own property near the proposed development, as well as the greater number of people who use Lakeshore Drive and the contiguous lakefront and surrounding dunes. In that regard, I understand that there are serious concerns about traffic, safety, drainage, and dune erosion associated with the proposed Hilltop Subdivision development. The Plan Commission should be especially diligent and conservative and assure that the development does not adversely impact drainage, cause erosion, or upset the delicate ecology of the surrounding dune. We also urge the Planning Commission to place special attention to the proposed single point of ingress-egress for the development off of Lakeshore Drive, essentially extending Carolina Ave south across Lakeshore Drive and up the steep dune. As you know, there already is a significant overcrowding on Lakeshore Drive. The extension of Carolina Ave likely will exacerbate the traffic density and associated safety. In addition, the proposed street is proposed to have a very steep grade, which will likely create additional safety hazards for cars, bicyclists, and pedestrians, and especially for emergency equipment. And also will create a potentially unsightly canyon effect. It appears that if the proposed street will be cut through the dune fronting Lakeshore Drive at a steep angle while maintaining the dune height to its east and west, as such, the result will be a canyon 50 to 70 feet long and 30 to 40 feet wide. The Plan Commission should work with the developers to explore other less intrusive ingress-egress options, including potentially extending Mormon Road into the property as the principal access. By the way, by doing so, the developers would gain the potential additional buildable lot fronting Lakeshore Drive. We are not opposed to the further development in the Sheridan Beach area that covered by the shoreline regulations, but we do urge the Plan Commission to take its time to carefully review the proposal. It seems premature to approve the requested subdivision on August 27th. We also urge the Plan Commission to encourage the developers to reach out and meet with the homeowners in the affected area. We are certain the Sheridan Beach Homeowners Association would be willing to facilitate such a discussion. Please let us know if you have any questions. We're unable to attend the August 27th public hearing, but we welcome the opportunity to meet with you in the future. Very truly yours, Jed Miranda Mendel. This is August 27th, 2019, plan regarding notice of public hearing on an application for a major subdivision. Dear Plan Commission members, I am writing this letter to address and request for approval of the Hilltop Subdivision engineer project number IN 16054 that is scheduled for a public hearing before the Plan Commission on Tuesday, August 27th. The Plan Commission should have received a detailed letter care of the Plan Commission as written by Mr. Jed Mendel and also addresses the request for approval of the proposed Hilltop Subdivision. A copy of this letter is attached for your use. I ask that prior to the Plan Commission rendering a decision on the proposed Hilltop Subdivision, the Plan Commission carefully take into consideration the following. 1, the comments from the residents and homeowners of Sheridan Beach. 2, the shoreline regulations for the lakeshore area implemented as required during the design review phase by the City of Michigan City. 3, the traffic study is performed in advance to rendering a decision on the proposed Hilltop subdivision. 4, the Plan Commission considers the comments in the above referenced letter. And 5, the Plan Commission, prior to rendering a decision on the Hilltop subdivision, that the 4 comments noted above are fully complied with. I would like to thank the Plan Commission for giving me the opportunity to express these comments. Sincerely, Mr. Edward Sawa. 204 Hilltop, Michigan City, Indiana, 46360. I won't read the attached letter because this is when I started with Mr. Mendel's letter. This is August 23rd, 2019. This is regarding a notice to public hearing on the application of a major subdivision, Hilltop subdivision. Dear Plan Commission, we are writing in response to the request for approval of the proposed major subdivision. The Hilltop subdivision set for a public hearing before the Plan Commission on Tuesday, August 27, 2019. The Beachwalk Property Owners Association have the following concerns. Number 1, the development includes Beachwalk property. The legal description included in the petition references property that is part of Beachwalk Phase 3. That alone makes it appear that they are asking to subdivide or remove property that is in Beachwalk and subject to its rules. If that is the case, then Beachwalk may object to the land being subdivided. Number 2, site plan concerns. Being that the development sits on a dune above Beachwalk, we have engineering concerns. What are the plans for drainage? What are the plans to prevent erosion? What are the plans to stabilize any dunes? What are their plans to make sure that Beachwalk will not be adversely affected? Number 3, will a traffic study be required? There is already significant overcrowding on Lakeshore Drive and other ingress-egress options available, such as the extension of Mormon Road. The association will have a representative at the meeting on Tuesday, and we look forward to discussing this further. Yours truly, Angel Vargas, Beachwalk Property Owners Association. This is from Mr. Steve Hellman, August 25th. This is to Craig Phillips. Objection to the Hilltop subdivision development. Dear Mr. Phillips, members of the Michigan City Plan Commission, as a full-time homeowner at the corner of Carolina and Lakeshore Drive, I object to the construction of a new road with access to Lakeshore Drive from Carolina. When I attended the Plan Commission meeting last fall for the expansion of Whisper Dunes, a member of the Plan Commission stated in no uncertain terms that new roads accessing an already overcrowded Lakeshore Drive will be allowed. Access was to come from US 12, from the US 12 side. Number 1, the new road will significantly affect the safety of both drivers and pedestrians on a street where traffic is regularly delayed to provide pedestrians with a safe walking lane along the road. Adding 20 homes, which I regularly see 6 cars when rented, would create a congested, dangerous intersection in which individuals from the new development will need to pull onto Lakeshore Drive from an extremely steep new slope or knee road. Number 2, the runoff from the rain will adversely affect homeowners on the existing homeowners of Carolina. The steepness of the newly proposed road and significant amount of new concrete will produce massive amounts of water coming down the hill during rainstorms. Number 3, the new road will adversely affect the character and value of the existing Sheridan Beach neighborhood. Contrary to the principles of the shoreline regulations recently adopted, the road will detract from the character and create a congested traffic nightmare. On Carolina, there is normally one lane of access when homeowners are parked on their side of the road to access their homes. With a new road across the street, I expect the need for a stop sign. Autos will not be able to turn until the existing vehicle from Carolina leaves. As a result, it is a stopway in which cars cannot employ the normal conventions of turning. The The development should be assessed from roads from either Beach Walk via Power Lane or Mormon Road. I asked the members of the Plan Commission to reject the creation of any of the new entry road off Lakeshore Drive. Regards, Stephen Hellman, 818 Lakeshore Drive, Michigan City, Indiana. This is from Mrs. Barb Malloy. Hope I said that correctly. Thursday, August 22nd, 2019, to Mr. Craig Phillips, Hilltops, regarding Hilltop subdivision. Good afternoon, Mr. Phillips. I am a member of the Sheridan Beach Homeowners Association. As such, I received a message from Jed Mandel regarding the meeting scheduled for August 27th, 2019. Mr. Mandel also shared a letter that he and his wife have written discussing issues related to the Hilltop subdivision. I read it, and I think the letter is an excellent summation of the issues, progress made to date, and the works which still awaits the Plan Commission. Rather than reiterate or regurgitate, depending on your point of view, their points, I write simply to sign on to their letter, encourage the Plan Commission's thoughtful consideration of the points they raise and the suggestions for further study, particularly as they relate to navigating safely through our community. Thank you, and let me know if you require a copy of the letter. Barb Malloy, 147 South Lake Ave, Michigan City, Indiana. Okay, this is from Mr. Robert Wiseman. August 23rd, 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, my wife and I have owned a small house at 1010 Lakeshore Drive since the 1980s. We love the character of Sheridan Beach and hope it remains substantially unchanged. I am attaching Jed Mandel's letter to you of August 21st, 2019 because we heartily endorse the sentiments herein expressed and certainly could not have said them better. We hope that you will be mindful of these concerns as you proceed with your deliberations. Very truly yours, Mr. Robert Hartman. This is from Miss Kimberly Pindo, Thursday, August 22nd. It's addressed to Mr. Craig Phillips regarding the upcoming Plan Commission meeting, Hilltop Subdivision Development. Mr. Phillips, attached is a letter to the Plan Commission in response to the request for them to approve the proposed Hilltop Subdivision Development. I would appreciate your providing each of the members of the Plan Commission a copy of this letter for Tuesday's public meeting. I'd like to have them receive a copy yet this week, if possible. If you want to provide me with email addresses of the members, I can send it to them directly. So this is, I'll go ahead and read it. It's essentially the same letter from Mr. Yeah, I think this is the same letter from Mr. Mandel, essentially. Yes, it is the same letter from Mr. Mandel. So, last one, this is August 23rd, 2019, Plan Commission, regarding notice of public hearing on an application for major subdivision, Hilltop Subdivision. Dear Plan Commission, we are writing in response to the request for approval of the proposed major subdivision, the Hilltop Subdivision, set for public hearing before the Plan Commission on Tuesday, August 27, 2019. The Beachwalk Properties homeowner, this is the same one from Angel. Sorry, that was a repeat. That's all of them. Sorry about that.
So, Mr. Willoughby, do you have, can you address at least some of this just so that as the commission members know where to go with their vote on this? Because obviously there's a lot of questions here.
I want to address at the outset the things that were attributed to me to say tonight's not the night to address those, because I don't think that's what we said. Tonight is not the night where you're going to get answers, meaning the public, and very thoughtful questions and all things that will and have to be taken into consideration, even if we didn't want to. The requirements of the code require us to do that. To address all of the concerns, the traffic studies, I believe that there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation that we're not going to be able to educate the public, nor is it part of tonight's process.
So why would you want to take it to the next level, though, when there are still so many concerns?
Because tonight is, to use a phrase that was used in one of the letters, this is a check-the-box meeting. This is, frankly, everybody got to experience, and let me elaborate on that, but you guys are all getting to experience what Craig used to get to experience by himself for many hours. But in a public setting and with more eyes and ears and brains considering it. This process is just to review, have we complied with our requirements of the submittals? All of those details, and I want to offer this, and Mr. Colillo and I have discussed this. We intend to invite the public to a meeting at his office and to address some of these concerns and to try to educate. The difficulty of that is, yeah, we're biased. We're not salesmen. We have a client to advocate for, and we have requirements and hoops to jump through for the city. But no matter what we say, they have to take it with a grain of salt. They should take it with a grain of salt. There are reasons why the traffic study is required, and there are interpretations of a traffic study that doesn't matter what time of year, despite perceptions. And so we're getting to the emotions and the I think I feel portions of things versus what the law requires and what the code requires. And so that's not to make light of any of them, but back to your question of why we'd want to move forward. It's not a matter of whether we should or shouldn't answer these things tonight. We're not in a position to, because we're not at that stage. This stage is, have we submitted the proper documents and letters in our plan that allow us to now go through and invest and spend the money on the engineering and have that traffic study, which is being conducted now, but to have those things completed, it's part of why the ordinance was changed. You guys can watch the videos of the public meetings, and I'm sure, well, he might get a lot of I told you so moments, but Craig did not want the traffic study to be changed. He wanted it at the outset. The ordinance doesn't require us to have it now. And so that's not a negative for the public. We're following the process. This is the process at its finest of going through, and we embrace all the comments. Maybe don't like how all of them are presented. Maybe we don't like all of the things that are said or the perceptions, but our intention is to try to answer those the best we can, to put a plan out there that works for the city, that adds to the tax base, that fits the rest of the environment around it, and at the same time, it has to make sense for my client. So again, I wish I could answer all those, because that would make everybody happy this evening, or not, I guess could be. But
I guess
to
I'm not
answer your
looking
question,
for you to answer every concern. I'm just saying that as you move forward now to the next phase, that all of these considerations be taken
and yes,
under
sir, and I
advisement.
think that's the point I'm making. They have to be. And the whole point tonight, and it's a new process. So many of them that may have participated in other developments, and perhaps when they're talking about, it was a different process. This is really kind of opening Craig's office to the past, now to the public, but all of those concerns, the traffic, the drainage, the engineering, beach walks concerns, we have to address those, and those have to be things that are a little more material than conceptual tonight. So again, we're here asking simply, as the code allows us to ask you to approve our development plan, to determine that we've sufficiently submitted the things that we're required to, which then allow us to the opportunity to submit, right, for the primary plat. And as part of that process, there's more public hearing. When I said at the outset, there's a lot more process here. This is baby steps. The rest of, I guess, the meat and potatoes, for lack of a better description, come later. And the public does get to view those and pick those apart and comb through them. And we do have to answer to those.
Okay, great, thanks. So I guess we're looking for a motion at this point, right?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
I mean, just for my own clarification, I suspect that a traffic study is not merely a counter placed in the road, but takes into consideration, historical data, other things just besides that. Could somebody clarify that for me?
So the ordinance states that any subdivision of land into 10 or more lots, including lots in any phases of larger subdivisions, which doesn't apply in this case, shall require a traffic impact analysis conducted by a traffic engineer licensed by the state of Indiana. At a minimum, the analysis shall include a statement of how the development plan is designed to provide for safe vehicular access to and from and circulation within the development without reducing level of service. I'll clarify what that means in a second. Evidence that the design and location of proposed street and highway access points minimize safety hazards. Maximize? Did I read that wrong? Minimize safety hazard. That is weird. Okay. And congestion. Just want to make sure that sounded weird to me, but it's correct. C, evidence that the points of access to collector and local streets and internal traffic circulation is compatible with the existing and any planned streets in adjacent developments. And D, proof that the traffic carrying capacities of adjacent streets and highways is sufficient to safely and efficiently accept traffic generated by the new development, as evidenced by 1, trip generation and data model outputs based on the travel characteristics of land uses, densities, for areas as applicable of the parcel proposed for development, and 2, capacity analysis for the adjacent streets from which the land proposed for development takes access, including existing and proposed levels of service, traffic counts for existing peak hour and average daily traffic, methods taking seasonal impacts of the proposed development into consideration for both pre- and post-development conditions. E, evidence that entrances, streets, and internal traffic circulation facilities in the development plan are compatible with existing and planned streets and adjacent developments. So just to clarify what level of service means, level of service is a grade A through E that's applied to a roadway segment. And that is based on basically the flow of traffic. And what we're saying is that a proposed development cannot affect that level. So if it's I don't know what the level of service of Lakeshore Drive is right now. But as part of the provision of information in the traffic impact analysis, they'll provide us with that before and after level of service. So what this is saying is that the level of service cannot change. Proposed development cannot change the level of service. And then with regard to the carrying capacity, the trip generation data and model outputs take into account, it says that you have to take into account seasonal considerations. So what that means in the case of a traffic analysis is that there's a rule of thumb that's applied to seasonality. This is not the only community in the United States that has seasonality associated with it. And so there are accepted methods for applying seasonality to proposed traffic analysis. So it goes well beyond just traffic counters. Traffic counters are the baseline data that's used to determine the amount of traffic that currently exists on the roadway. But it goes well beyond that. So based on this, there's a lot more information that would be presented as part of a traffic impact analysis.
Then I have another question regarding the staff recommendation. The condition, provision of a dune protection plan is required per zoning ordinance 04.04 subsection L1B5. So they've laid out, an area that they're shown as protected. what additional criteria is required to
So,
satisfy
actually, give me that back.
condition 1.
Sorry, guess I should hold on to this. So, according to the standards, it says a dune protection plan to protect both fore dunes and back dunes from breach, blowout, and general erosion due to development. So basically, the idea of identifying where protection will occur, but also how protection will occur from an erosion standpoint, we didn't feel that, based on the information that was presented, that we didn't feel that information was provided completely adequately. There was some information provided with regard to overall erosion control, but specifically how we protect the dunes from breach, blowout, and general erosion. There's probably a bit more information that needs to be provided. Things like the provision of the vegetation that would restore any areas disturbed by development, and things like that. Maybe there's some special considerations with regard to this area because of the fact that it's a dune environment. So we felt that should be a condition of approval if the Plan Commission chooses to accept the development plan as presented.
Any other comments?
I have a question, Mr. Khalil. Is there a scientific or technical reason why there's no access to come off of, say, Meerman Road or Power Lane? You have, looks like you're adjacent to Power Lane on one side here, and there's an unimproved right-of-way and road over here. Are there topographical or soil issues?
In general, I guess, just Mormon Drive itself, it's not adequate because it's not really wide enough for public right-of-way. So the existing public right-of-way for Mormon Drive, it is not adequate per even the city standard. So per the city standard as it exists right now, we have to have an adequate public right-of-way for any roadway for any potential development. And Mormon Drive as it exists right now, unfortunately it doesn't. Could be in the future used as an alley, and it's undeveloped, by the way. So a portion of Mormon Drive, it is undeveloped right now. And there's a steep slope actually right next to it, which is the major dune that you see as in the outlot. So I just want to make sure to stress that Mormon Drive, we looked at it, it doesn't have the existing public right-of-way capacity.
Is there any access off of Power Lane coming off that way?
Power Lane, if I'm not mistaken, is part of Beach Walk. And it's a very, very narrow streets in Beach Walk, and it's a PUD by itself. So to add to the capacity that exists in Beach Walk right now, it will definitely change the PUD feel and character, and that was not our intent. So the most logical place, I guess, to actually access the development is the adequate public right-of-way, the width, which is Lakeshore Drive.
So you wanted to protect the PUD over on the east side there?
Absolutely, yes.
Add to that if I could. So that was a major consideration as far as discussions about the proposed development, and Mormon Road is only 25 feet wide. The city requirements are 50 feet. We cannot require the developer to buy additional land to propose a site for development. And to address, I guess, the access to Power Lane by way of, I guess it would be that portion of 12B, Lot 12B and Beach Walk. Lot 12B is not wide enough where it connects to the rest of this development to be adequate to meet the standards of right-of-way access for the city. So those 2 points, we didn't bring it up in our staff recommendation because we can't require that. We can't require the developer to buy additional land to access right-of-way that doesn't comply with city standards currently. So in order to buy additional land, they would have to buy the land from the schools. The schools does not have to agree to give that, to sell that land to the developer, and the city can't hold the developer hostage because they have to buy additional land to make those connections. So we ultimately are basically looking at a situation where Lakeshore Drive is the access to the site, and it's essentially our job to determine a way that we can do that with the least impact possible, but maintaining the standards that are required by the code.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question for the staff. As it related to, you talk about soil erosion, with the dune and so forth, but is the erosion from many of these people living down because of the sloping 12 to 14%? Do you feel comfortable in your recommendation to us as the commission that there's not going to be substantial erosion or water runoff or other things that
We're not making a recommendation with regard to the construction plans at this point. We're basically making a recommendation that we feel that, with the exception of the one condition, that we believe that they provided the information required for a development plan approval. So we're not making a statement to that effect yet, because that's to be reviewed as part of the primary plat.
Craig, is it conceivable that the traffic study would guide the number of lots that can be built?
I guess the answer to that would be is if the traffic study came back and a level of service change was determined as a result of that, there's a threshold at which that level of service would not change. That would perhaps dictate the level of development that could occur on the property. But we don't know that yet. So in concept, the idea of a proposed cul-de-sac coming off of Lakeshore Drive, because of the access considerations that we mentioned, is ultimately, kind of what we're considering in concept.
Right.
The statement that was made about this basically opening my office to the rest of the Plan Commission is essentially true. It's an expanded concept plan, is ultimately what has occurred here. The city council ultimately decided that the traffic impact analysis was not required at the development plan step, but rather at the primary plat step. And so essentially, I've issued a letter with regard to the concept plan, and I comment basically. I give comments based on the requirements submitted, the requirements that are for submittal for a concept plan. Essentially, this is an additional opportunity for the public to offer their comments on the concept of the development, and their concerns that could also be addressed and dealt with at the primary plat stage if they aren't required to be provided at this stage. So it's essentially, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Hill, what we're here tonight to discuss is whether or not the development plan submittal requirements have been met.
That's correct. I'll have more to say about that in my report.
Okay, yeah. Because there will be additional opportunities for public input and additional requirement for information to be submitted by the petitioners. Much more detailed in terms of construction plans, drainage, access. Access is pretty clear, but traffic analysis. So
great. Thanks, Craig. So if there's no more comments from the commission members, then Mr. Hale, do you want to give your report?
My report for petition number 904-19, petitioner and owner Lakeshore Hilltop LLC, would note initially that this is a public hearing. I've had an opportunity to review the notice documentation supplied by the petitioner. I find that it has met our requirements and you're free to consider this matter. Next, globally, I would note that what we're here about is major subdivision approval. We're all familiar with that. It's consisted of primarily two stages: the primary plat and its approval, and a secondary plat significantly later in time, typically for projects such as this. The importance of the primary plat approval is that you are approving the plan, you are directing the developer that he may go forward and implement the plan that you approve. So it is a very important step in major subdivision. In the past, we have had a two-step process. We have the submission of a concept plan, which is then reviewed and approved by the enforcement official staff. The Plan Commission is not involved in that process. And then we have the second step in the past, which is submission of a primary plat approval and consideration at a public hearing by this body. So you have one chance to review the material and make a determination. Our new amendments, and there's been much talk about this, but I feel it's important that I stress it. Our new amendments have made changes to the entire R1E overlay district. And one of those changes is to just add in the middle of step 1 and step 2 another process. And this, let's call it step 2. The new step 2 requires the petitioner to submit a development plan, and for this body at a public hearing to approve it. Our ordinance requires the developer to submit a variety of information as part of that development plan. And your approval is to acknowledge that that information has been supplied to your satisfaction. It is not, I'm going to say that again, it is not approval of the project. It is not telling the developer that he can go and implement the project. The developer will, at his time frame, submit a primary plat request for that approval. And at that point, this body will decide if that plan meets all of the standards and requirements. So this is a, one might say, perfunctory step in the process. You're not approving this in the sense that you're approving what has been submitted. You're just saying, yes, I'm approving the development plan materials that have been submitted so that we can go forward. And we'll decide if those materials are sufficient at a later step. I want to stress this as well. I see two very positive results from these new amendments. The first is that it requires the developer to submit this information at a much, much earlier stage in the whole process. That gives everyone, my concern is you, the Plan Commission, much more time to analyze and consider a lot of this information. But it also gives the public much more time to analyze and review this information. I think that's a very big positive for adding these amendments. The second positive that I see out of these amendments is that it requires a second public hearing. I find it very positive that the public is given a second chance to come and voice their concerns and their questions and their comments to this body. That's part of our process, and that's a very important part of that process. So I think those two positives make this added step. I admit it takes more time, but that's a positive. And I think that we should be happy that we've added this, and I encourage you to feel good about adding the second development plan submission and approval process. I always end my comment by saying what you can do. So you can do, as I see it, three things. You can approve the development plan. Again, that's not approving that it's good to go. You're saying the information has been submitted. You can approve the development plan subject to the condition that Mr. Schuyler put in, condition 1. Or you can table this and require the petitioner to come back with more information because you feel that the development plan doesn't meet the requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve petition 904-19, subject to the following condition: provision of a dune protection plan as required per zoning ordinance 04-04 subsection L1B5.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Mr. York?
Ms. Carnes,
Yes.
Mr. Gallus,
Yes.
Mr. Granquist,
Yes.
Mr. Latchford,
Yes.
Mr. Klunder,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Peller,
Yes.
Mr. Spurling,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item of business is the report of the director.
Sorry. I have nothing else to add this evening. So,
Mr. Hale, do you have any additional comments?
I do, if I may.
Sure, please.
I'll be brief. In the past, Mr. York and I have talked to you several times about submitting some changes to our rules. I think it would be important that we go forward with that. I'd like your consensus or approval, formal or otherwise, that staff and I start to put in revisions to the rules with a sort of a target that at the first of the year we would implement these new rules. Just as an example, currently, as you know, we require that notice by petitioners be given to all the adjoining neighbors. Do we want to consider expanding that to everyone within 300 feet, 400 feet, something like that? We have a whole variety of rules like that. I think that as part of that process, our forms could be revised to get us more information and to provide more specifics. Yes, it is. Or unfortunately, tonight after this hour, it's not so easy. And those sorts of things. And I think there's I know that there is some confusion about some of our timetables. And I think that we should get everything on one set of rules, and this is what we follow. You're the body that sets these rules, that is the Plan Commission. And you would set them for the Board of Zoning Appeals as well, but it would seem to me to be very unhelpful if we had two sets of rules anyway. So I would expect that these rules would apply to both bodies. And that's all. I'm just asking if you want us to go ahead and do that.
Any comments?
I would support a consensus for that.
I would support that as well.
And I would as well, because like when the bridge was built in my neighborhood, it did not abut my property, but I looked right into the windows from my windows. So I didn't get notice. So I think that's a good idea.
My intention then would be to bring a few of the more important, or let's just say those issues that require more consideration to you to think about and just sort of talk about maybe for 5 or 10 minutes or so at the next meetings, and we'll work through it that way.
Sure, thank you. That'd be great.
If your objective is to have something in place for the beginning of the year, this is August, so then we have September, October, November. I mean, so the time is short.
Any old business tonight? Any new business? General discussion? I think we kind of did that. No more? Yes.
just, I could have done this under my report, I guess, but just a reminder, it's been a little bit of time since we had a conversation about the Alternative Housing Committee. We just today sent out a poll to the members that from the Plan Commission Council and Administration that had indicated that they would like to be part of that committee to try to set up an initial meeting to kind of set the stage for that process the week of September 16th. So I just wanted to let the Plan Commission know that We've been a little busy with some other things as of late, and so we apologize for the delay in getting to that, but we wanted to make sure that you guys know that we're going to focus on getting that first meeting set up so we can start to have those discussions. So if you've received that, please. Sorry.
Who else did you
It's
say?
a whole list, so I don't remember off the top of my head. It's members of the Planning Commission, the City Council, and the City Administration. So if you received that note from us, please respond to it and let us know what times. I believe it was 5 to 6 p.m. All 5 days. All 5 days.
I received it this afternoon and responded right away.
So just let us know which one of those evenings, which any of those evenings you're available.
We're just trying to match it up.
Yeah. So we're trying to get as many people if we can to the meeting as we can. So.
Thanks, Craig. Any public comment at this point?
Just one, because we didn't have an opportunity. Thank you for your patience. We're all new to this process, and again, I know Craig is chuckling. He won't admit that we all get to experience what he gets to in something on this grand scale, but thank you for at least the patience and consideration tonight.
Thanks, Chris. With that, I think we are adjourned.